Hello! I'm going to put out a video tomorrow continuing to analyse the body cam footage of Gabby and Brian so that we can look at their behaviour and what they say and what they each say happened. But today I want to talk about some of the details that have come out about when Gabby was last seen. So that was on the 27th of August, and her and Brian had had lunch at the Tex-Mex restaurant in Jackson Hole. So a couple were eating lunch there between 1 and 2, and they saw that there was this argument between Brian and 3 of the staff. They were all female staff, so it was the manager, a waitress and a hostess apparently. And she thought that the reason he was arguing was because of some disagreement about the bill. And so what they said was that he was really aggressive and he left the restaurant, but then he kept coming back. So he apparently came back 4 times. And continued with this argument. And then Gabby came in. She had been really upset. She was apparently crying throughout, and although she wasn't seen arguing with him, it was more between him and the staff. But she then came in and apologised for him to the staff, so on his behalf. And then he was seen on his own driving the van, and apparently he was driving it slowly and as if he didn't really know where he was going, and then sort of half pulled over for her to pass. And then 4 hours after the argument in the Tex-Mex restaurant, the van was seen again inside the dispersed campsite and not far from where Gabby's body was later found. And as the van was approached, we can see that the back door closes.
There, okay. There's a black sliver right in the back of that van. You would think it's a tree, right? Well, we'll see in a second here. So you're going to start seeing it close here in a second. Watch. It's going to start closing. Watch very carefully. Right in the center of the screen right now. There it goes. It's starting to close. Boom, closed, okay?
So somebody's inside. We don't know if it's 1 or 2 people, but the people, when they passed it, they don't appear to have noticed because they thought it seemed like no one was there. And it was quite odd, apparently, for the door to be closed because usually people have the back doors open. That's on Nerve Gorilla's channel. He seems to be a very observant guy. He also noticed sandals outside the back of the van, and that there was no one in the driving seat. So have a look at his channel and have a look at that video if you want to see all of that. It was on this day that Gabby's mum received a text from Gabby's phone referring to her granddad as Stan, and she apparently never called her granddad by his name. So that was an alarm bell that rang for her mum. Gabby's mum received another text message from Gabby's phone days later, which just said something that seemed out of character. It said there was no signal where she was going, and that was it. So again, this was a very strange text to her mum. So it seems like the 27th may well have been the day that Gabby was murdered. The scene that the couple at the restaurant described suggests that Brian was really angry that day, but it doesn't talk about a conflict between him and Gabby. So why would he go from being angry at the staff to killing his girlfriend? I've talked in previous videos about how a narcissist can become really angry and experience a kind of rage when they're threatened with the feeling of shame. That might have happened with Brian because he's given off a lot of signs of having traits of narcissistic personality disorder, and we can look at those in the next videos I put out. I don't want to say, oh, he has it, because we're just looking at him from a distance here. We're just looking at these examples of his behaviour, but it does seem likely to me. And when we look at how Gabby went back into the restaurant and apologised for him, knowing that the staff were aware that Gabby didn't agree with him, that his own girlfriend wasn't on his side, might have been too much for him. If he thought they were being overcharged on the bill, he may have felt insulted, he may have felt disrespected, and to a narcissist, respect is everything. And so if he did feel disrespected, I think he may have gone in each time to try to even out what he perceived to be an uneven power dynamic. It seems to me that each time he went in, he was trying to win, and it wasn't working, and that's why he kept going back in. You know, he was feeling like he was a loser and he needed to be the winner. A narcissist sees their interactions with people in terms of winning and losing. They have to win because they have a need to see themselves as superior. And so with all of that going on already, with this shame that he was trying to overcome with all of his rage, you know, at these poor women, I wonder if what happened was when Gabby then took their side, that humiliation became too much to bear, and as a result the rage got worse, and now it was directed at Gabby. And we don't know what happened in the van when they drove off, so maybe Gabby was continuing to say, look, I wish you hadn't behaved like that, they were nice ladies, or, you know, the bill was okay or whatever, and this shame was just increasing in him. You know, this feeling of being betrayed by her, humiliated by her, you know, that these three people in the restaurant and anyone else in there observing would have known he was the loser and his own girlfriend wasn't on his side. And so her talking about it still, if she was, that might have rubbed it in further, and he might have got more and more angry with her. And he had to win. If a narcissist feels humiliated, it doesn't matter if your intention wasn't to shame them. You know, if your intention, like in Gabby's case, her intention there was, it seems, just to try to make the ladies feel better. You know, she felt for them. She felt awful that they had been experiencing this really aggressive behaviour over and over again. And so it doesn't seem that there was any malice towards her boyfriend when she apologised for him. But to a narcissist, that, you know, they experience it as malice. You know, they experience it as somebody shaming them, somebody looking down on them, somebody, you know, seeing them as pathetic. And that makes them really angry. And they want the other person to feel how they feel. And so then that, you know, then they're abusive. They do something to punish them and to try to make them feel powerless and helpless and rubbish as well. Even Gabby crying may, I think, have made Brian angry, because it was evidence of how unhappy she was around him. And it also would have been obvious to the people in the restaurant how unhappy she was because of his behaviour. That would be humiliating for Brian. So you can see how this, coupled with the fact she went into the restaurant to apologise for him, may have only served to perpetuate Brian's rage. Gabby might have said she wanted to leave him, and that might have been too much. That might have made him angry. It's common for an abusive person to really react in the worst ways when their partner leaves them. That's the most dangerous time in a relationship with an abuser. So that's also a possibility. A park ranger had been trying to persuade Gabby to leave Brian the day that the police stopped them. And, you know, she'd been saying, look, this has all the signs of a toxic relationship. You're not happy, just leave. But Gabby that was really not looking likely, apparently, you know, and she didn't even want to spend a night without Brian, even though he'd just been reportedly hitting her. So that makes me wonder if she would have been ready so soon afterwards to have told him she was leaving. I'm not sure that she would have been. But the information about the argument in the restaurant that day does give us the opportunity to look at what narcissists can do, how dangerous they can be when they are feeling shame or when they're in danger of feeling shame. And, you know, and it's important if you're going to be alone with them, you know, if you're going to be in a situation where they have some power and there's no one there to help you, you know, it's important to be really careful about what might humiliate them, you know, and to watch out for the repercussions, you know, and how they're going to try and punish you for doing that. When Gabby went into the restaurant, there were plenty of people around. She was safe. She apologised for him and everything was okay there and then in that moment. But later she was alone with Brian. And that's the thing, you know, a narcissist can feel humiliated when you're with friends, or family, and everything's fine, and you might not even realise they're feeling that way, and then you find out about it later, you know, if you're alone with them. That's a pattern to watch out for. If that's something you've experienced, if your partner gets really angry and you're really shocked, it comes out of nowhere, you can't really understand why they feel that way, and they think you did something terrible in front of other people and you can't see it that way, then bear in mind that it's most likely they probably felt shame. You know, they probably found the experience humiliating because they have, you know, such fragile egos. And it's so easy for them to get that feeling, and then when they do, it's all enveloping, you know, it's overwhelming, and it is converted then into rage, which is safer for them, because that way, you know, it's thrown away from themselves, but then you can get the brunt of it. And so if you find that happening, then you're in a really toxic relationship. Tomorrow I'll be back talking about Brian and Gabby's body language and the things they say, carrying on from where I left off last time when they were stopped by police. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and I'll see you then.